we've seen yet another financial boost for the country amid rising concerns about the impact of the coronavirus. The World Bank has given South Africa an 11.4 billion rand loan to aid in the fight against the pandemic. The country is slowly emerging from the fourth wave of infections. Let's get views now from Wits senior lecturer Dr. Lumkile Mondi, just to get a sense from him about this latest major deal. Dr. Mondi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Well, the World Bank announcing earlier today, on this Friday morning, that it's approving that 11.4 billion rand loan for South Africa as part, of course, of the efforts to recover the economy and, of course, in the fight against COVID-19. It's not the first international institute to be pumping money into South Africa in the last year.
Good afternoon, Dan. We are very encouraged by the World Bank continuing one of the longest relationships in multilateral institution funding for development. Your viewers should remember that many of the infrastructure that we have seen being destroyed under ANC government, whether it's the railway network that we have, which was electrified through the funding of the World Bank, it is the ESCOM power generation utility, which also got massive support from the World Bank. But of course, many of the work that the Treasury does around economic policy has come from the support of the World Bank. So it's a very critical partner, and we're very encouraged as South Africans that we're able to diversify our source of funding, not only from the National Development Bank, the New Development Bank, that is the Chinese-based one, or the other private sector institutions, which we hope that in the next budget, the South African government will go to the international markets and borrow so that we can create a curve that will allow our private sector to go and borrow behind government, having established a benchmark for private sector to go borrow internationally to support our economic recovery.
Should we not be concerned about the rising borrowees, Dr. Mondi? I'm just asking because last year the IMF, I think it was in July, approved a loan of like 70 billion rand at the time for South Africa. And then, as you said, the new development bank under BRICS, the new development bank of BRICS also lending South Africa last year about 14.5 billion rand. That seems like a big chunk of monies that are being loaned, and one just worries about the exposure to debt.
Well, debt is very good if it's being used for infrastructure investment so that you can sweat that borrowing money in that infrastructure going forward. Where debt gets bad is when debt is being used for consumption. So if you have to take the debt and introduce a basic income grant, it will be a very bad decision because you're borrowing long, but you're consuming short. So you create problems for self. So for the Southern government, as long as we've got transparency, as long as we continue with the reforms that are being driven by Minister Masondo with his colleague, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Kodongwane, and his other colleagues in the energy sector, in the competition sector, as well as the telecom sector, do the right thing, I think we'll get a return from this borrowing. So I'm very happy that the government continues to borrow, but we need to use the money wisely, and therefore it's not bad to go and borrow. The question is how you use the money, and I'm hoping that it will be applied correctly for what I've just said.
Yeah, I mean, Dondo Mukhajane, the DG of the Treasury, in the joint statement with the World Bank today, saying, among other things, this loan from the World Bank will assist, and I'm quoting here, Dr. Mondi, in addressing the immediate challenge of financing critical health and social safety net programs, while also continuing to develop our economic reform agenda to build back better. That sounds good to you?
Only the social net programs, that doesn't sound good. You don't borrow to give money out. It is a dangerous, unsustainable policy decision. So we need to borrow to invest in infrastructure, as critical health, as the DG has said. But anything else that requires us to fund a social support program requires more innovation. Remember then, we need a growing economy. If we grow economy, we invest on the things around infrastructure, around creating innovation and new opportunities that will drive growth, we'll be on the right track. For consumption, we are on a slippery road. And I'm very, very worried that this is what breeds populist policies, where you borrow to eat. We must borrow to invest. So I'm hoping that the minister as well as the DG do use the money wisely on infrastructure, not on a base income grant. Because if we do so, we will really be on a slippery road, because without growth, that support will come to an end, and it will, of course, lead to social upheaval. So I'd rather be growing communities than using the money for consumption.
Yeah, there is a sense about this economic reconstruction that they might be investing. Part of the statement talks about supporting South Africa's commitment to climate change. That would suggest maybe hopefully investment in renewable sources of energy going forward with part of this money.
Critical, particularly just to assist Eskom to transition. Remember, many companies have already announced that they want to be off-grid by 2025. So in that regard, we do have a responsibility as a government so that we can support the millions of South Africans who are outside the affordability, but more important also, who for them to change their lives within the slogan of a better life for all, to have access to electricity. So we need to use part of the money to assist also Eskom in its transition towards cleaner fuel and energy generation, and in doing so, fulfill the social mandate of ensuring that no South African is left behind as we transition to a low-carbon energy without excluding people, which we have done in historical under apartheid, with black people having no access to energy infrastructure at all.
And how important, finally, and very briefly, Dr. Mondi, that the statement points out that this latest loan from the World Bank to South Africa is at a low interest.
This is very important because we must use any opportunity that is not going to make our grandchildren and great-grandchildren then to be poorer, because there is so much expensive debt that was accumulated. So this is a very good step. And in fact, then as the last point, the new development bank under BRICS should learn a lot of lessons from World Bank around transparency, around how these loans are being priced. And I'm hoping that the DG and the Minister of Finance will allow us, when he signs these loans with the new development bank, that there's transparency, because so many of the loans done by through the Department of Public Enterprises with the new development bank have not been transparent. We've written letters, we've complained, and we've been told that they don't want to move the market, so they won't share. So I'm hoping that they learn from this loan that they need to be transparent so that we can hold policymakers and politicians to account at the cost of funding that South Africa contracts itself to.
Yeah, shouldn't be contracting ourselves to some high debt levels, so that your sovereign debt becomes so huge that in future our children and their children will be suffering. Thank you very much, Dr. Lumkile Mondi, from your views there. He's, of course, from the Wits School of Economics and Finance.